to order. This is our weekly finance meeting, and at this point, we open the floor for public. I guess we don't do a roll call for this.
No.
Okay. So we open the floor for public comment, and I don't see anybody. Looks like they want to jump up and scream out. So we'll move on to item 3, which is the approval of the minutes of February 5 and February 12. So if there's in hand, anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second. Moved and seconded for both, and all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries. Very good. Today's topic of discussion is going to talk to us about the LTSR. Where we stand with that. So,
Yeah.
Annie,
Thank you so much. Actually, the beginning of February, we had reached out to the state because of some fiscal things, which is why I'm here. I reached out to Sandy, and Sandy suggested convening and having the opportunity to chat with you folks about a waiver request that we felt it was appropriate to make to the state. And so if you don't mind, I'll just kind of roll through the slides. There's not too many. Of course, you know, this long-term structured residence, that's what LTSR stands for, is part of the ACLU lawsuit settlement with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And that was related to the amount of time that individuals spent incarcerated with a serious mental illness. This ACLU felt that there was inadequate treatment supports, and therefore something needed to happen. They filed a lawsuit with the state and won. So we had the opportunity to apply for a chance to do this big program. We were approved for it. So under the licensing standards, it is a locked 16-bed program for individuals with serious mental illness. It was actually approved in a year ago, fiscal year 18-19. We are now targeted for a completion date of July 2020. This is the architect's rendering of what the program will look like upon completion. The only thing that's kind of missing there is a 6-foot privacy fence that will go literally around the whole side of the building. So there's like a courtyard area that will be developed, and that will all be like a nice private area for individuals who are there, who may be visiting with families. This is the construction project, so I've been getting weekly updates. Have met with the contractors as well as New Visions, who is our contracted agency who's developing the program. Some of these I just got this morning. In fact, this was fresh this morning from the AP Williams is the contractor who's developing the program. So you can see it looks like a building. Super excited about this. This is the first time we've ever built something from scratch. All of our other projects, we've purchased an existing property and done renovations to it. So this is our first build. So really, the program's focus will be to provide treatment in a therapeutic environment for 16 people who have a serious mental illness. Some of these people will have a criminal history. Some of these people will be incompetent to stand trial. Some folks will be coming from Danville State Hospital. As you remember, back in 2005, 2006, when Harrisburg State Hospital closed, we transitioned 15 individuals to Danville State Hospital. Our current census at Danville State is 21. So we are over our bed cap at Danville. Some of that challenge is because we have people who literally spent decades in state institutions who the community wouldn't be adequately prepared to work with. And our programs, the mental health system is designed in a way when largely our programs are voluntary. So if somebody says they don't want mental health services, they don't have to have them. There's only a few caveats to that. Sometimes we talk about the involuntary treatment process. These individuals will likely be subject to that involuntary treatment process.
Just an observation. Would I be incorrect in stating that with the closure of Harrisburg, that the resources that came to us in its place were inadequate until taxed?
I wouldn't say that.
You would not say that?
I would not. Actually, back then, Dennis Marion did an amazing job
Yes.
advocating on our behalf. And as I remember, this number sticks in my head, we received $2,592,000 through the closure of Harrisburg State Hospital and developed a bunch of wonderful community services.
Yeah.
What impacted us was when the
That
economy.
was a very special application
Yes,
that others were not entitled to.
I would agree with that. I think we fared better than many other counties. Just being very honest with you, I do think we fared better than other counties. And I think that was in large part because of Dennis's advocacy work.
Yes, I agree with that.
So out of the closure, we developed some wonderful programs, but we have some challenges in that in fiscal year 9, whatever year the economy tanked, our budget was cut by over $1 million. Well, that had a huge impact, coupled with the fact that Cumberland County is the fastest growing county in the Commonwealth. That has negatively impacted. So we actually met years ago with all of our providers and kind of said, okay, how can we minimize the hurt of this? How can we minimize this cut? And so we have made a number of cuts, and overall I think did a pretty decent job. And thankfully the state has worked well with us, even in the midst of our being over our census. You know, they've done a great job sort of saying, okay, we understand your situation. They know that we're the fastest growing county in the state, so they understand that. But I do think that this program will help us because I believe what's going to happen, we have staff now identifying referrals who will go to this program, and I believe come summer we're probably going to have a mass exodus from Danville State, probably 8 or 9 people from Danville, which will bring us back under our bed cap by a good number. So that will be a win for the state. It'll be a win for the other 20 counties that send their citizens to Danville State, because it'll create capacity in long-term inpatient psychiatry. So just to kind of make sure that the commissioners have an awareness, it's not exclusively individuals who have been involved in the justice system. Some individuals just have a serious mental illness who need a lot of support. But this is the highest level of support that's available in the community mental health system. So the program focused, just so everybody is aware, it does operate under Pennsylvania Code 5220. It's licensed annually, so there's a lot of strict regulations around the program.
And we'll continue to have access to the Danville beds.
Yes.
Correct, okay. And it's how
Yes.
many, 15?
Yeah, I'll explain that. Actually,
Okay. Sorry.
the funding strategy for this was in part the ACLU lawsuit funds, and that was $1 million a year annualized. And then the CHIP, which is actually the part that impacts our Danville capacity, we said we would take one Danville person, or at least fiscally one Danville person, and that's annualized at $125,000 a person. The reason why we kept it low is because with every person you commit to taking out, and that $125,000 comes along, they close the bed. And so we would no longer have access to that resource. So we have to be very mindful of how many we select and make sure that we can manage within that census that the state gives us. So we were very thoughtful about how to structure it. That doesn't mean we can't have more discharges coming from Danville. It just means we only have funding for one, and we maintain the same bed capacity. We also, as a part of this project, Health Choices had a number of funds that were housing reinvestment dollars that have been from various fiscal years that have been sitting on the books, and they were allocated to Perry County. And last year, when we started to really work on the project, realized we didn't have enough money to do it. When the project, we were getting bids from architects and bids from the general contractors, and it was looking like it was going to be, $2.2, $2.3 million to develop the program. We're like, oh wow, I don't know if we can do this and hire staff. And so we talked to the state and they said, hey, you have this allocation, you've not used it for Perry County, write us a letter. Tell us you want it reallocated to Cumberland County. So we met with the Perry County commissioners to make sure that they were okay with this, understanding that it would also be serving Perry County citizens. And they said that was fine. So we received an additional $384,000 in change in order to complete the project. So we know we have enough money to do this. So that's a big relief. We do anticipate, though, the program is going to cost $1.4 million, $1.5 million annually to operate. As you can anticipate, programs like this are expensive. So the purpose of our waiver request is under the fiscal code, those are the 4,300 regs. The county is only permitted to put 25% down on the acquisition of a property, which would mean that the provider, Divisions is our provider, would have to mortgage, and they were targeting about a 20-year mortgage. A 20-year commercial mortgage over the life of the loan would be about $80,000 a year. When we started to think about that and think about the fact that we had last year's allocation and this year's allocation, we knew we could pay for it up front. And then over the life of the program, we could take that $80,000 and spend it probably in lots of other beneficial places in the community mental health system. So hence, that's why we made the request to fiscal in the state. So I wrote a letter early in February, and they came back with a bunch of questions, which I believe is included in your packet, probably the email that I received from the BFO. One of their accountants' email was dated February the 5th, and they came back with a bunch of questions. They wanted appraisals. They wanted to see if the county would contract for 5 years. And so I reached out to Keith Brenneman and said that, Keith, can you take a look at this? And I emailed back to the state and said that's unlikely, given we have an annual allocation. Unless the state is willing to give us 5 years worth of money, we are not able to do 5 years worth of contract. And Keith did say he would review our uniform terms and conditions which we provide with our contracts. So I responded to this email by sending another letter, which again I believe is included in your packet. The state, the accountants from the state felt satisfied, I believe, because they said they were going to basically recommend that we receive the waiver. We had heard that other counties had received similar waivers, so we felt like we were, making a good faith effort to wisely spend citizens' resources by doing it this way. I feel like we have been successful answering the questions. The only one that remains kind of outstanding is that 5-year contract thing. But in our uniform terms and conditions, we do address that if the provider were to go out of business, that all of the real estate, all of the assets would remain with the county. I mean, that's clearly listed in our uniform terms and conditions. So we feel like we're on solid ground with the direction we're moving. And as you can see, it's February and they've got the thing under roof. So we're excited about how things are rolling. And I think I'll stop there and just see, number one, if any of you have any questions.
We're still tracking well for the completion target.
It's tracking exceptionally well. The
Good
weather has
good
been
weather.
fantastic.
Are we going to be done earlier potentially?
That's what we're hoping. They actually scheduled the final inspection for July 13th. We already have that in writing. I'm hoping that if there might be a little flexibility in that, if they were able to complete the work, the interior work, and could move it up a little bit, because along with the final inspection, to make sure it's up to code and all the appraisals and everything, which we told the state we would make sure they got a copy of. We know that the state will also have to, the DHS side of the state will have to come and license the program. So I reached out to Divisions and said, hey, we might want to start to advertise for staff. It's February, we need to start thinking about staffing for the program and let's see what we can get moving here. So I do feel good about how things are moving and thankful we haven't had any snow, and so the guys are working hard on the project. So if you don't have any questions about the way, I do think we answered the question successfully. We're just waiting for the official letter to come back. And so far, the state's been incredibly great to work with. You can tell they're like our cheerleaders saying, guys, this is good. We know you're working hard on this. So I feel like, they're in our corner, wanting us to be successful. So that's good. And state hospitals, they're also saying, when's that program going to be done? When can because they're looking for relief so they can bring people into the state hospital system faster. So it'd be a win for everybody. The one thing that I am concerned about, though, and this is why I figured today was a great opportunity to talk to you about this, I'm a little concerned about the community. When the community learns that this is a long-term structured residence, when they learn that it's a locked program, when they hear from somebody that people are coming out of prison and that's where they're going to be, because the location is actually right here in Carlisle. It's right up next to Marcello's Pizza on 34. So it's close. But I am a little concerned that we want to be sure that however we're talking to the community, that we're communicating messages that support recovery, messages that support the fact that we are doing our best to support human beings who have an illness, and that we are supporting them to live productive lives in our community. And we have been successful transitioning people from our long-term structured residents into the community, especially as they age, and they have more specialized needs. We've been very successful. Our average length of stay is about 3 years, but we need programs to move them to. So we're already sort of thinking about what next. Okay, so if we do this 16-bed program, what can we do next to maximize resources to keep people moving through the system? Because after they go to the state hospital, we have to be able to bring them home. So we're already having conversations about that. But so if you, the commissioners, happen to receive phone calls from concerned citizens, and my goodness, what are they doing in my hometown? However you can articulate that this is an important project, and we believe it's going to be a benefit to our community, and we think that it's a wonderful thing to have folks with serious mental illness be supported adequately in our home community. I have one mother who calls me about once a month. Her son is incompetent to stand trial, and he burned the family home down. But she calls me about once a month and says, the other week she called me and she said, "Is that the house?" I said, "Well, that depends. What do you see?" And she said, "Right there by Carnes. Is that the house?" "Yeah, it is. That's the house." And she was so happy. She was so happy because she's in her 70s, and her son, it's hard to drive 2 hours to Danville, and it's hard to be able to see him. And so, she sees this as an amazing opportunity to bring him closer home and to be able to spend time with him. So we're excited about it. I think it's going to be super important, though, that if there are concerns in the community, that we're able to minimize that. I mean, just so you folks are aware, we've been meeting with the contractors bi-weekly. One of the most recent meetings, we had lots of conversations about locking systems in the facility. What would be swipe locks, what would be key locks, cameras, where we would have cameras on the premises. Just again, to make sure that people are safe and to make sure that, the staff are aware of what's happening. The locking system in the medication rooms, who would have access to those locks, and even to the degree of the staff exit for the day, they leave their swipe badges there. So when staff come in the morning or second shift, they have to be left into the program, so there isn't going to be keys just kind of willy-nilly out there. So we're already having conversations like that.
So, Annie, if you're a resident in this program, do you get to go to the grocery store?
If you want to, and if the treatment staff feel like you're able to be there and be safe, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we actually have one person who found employment as part of the transition out. And so there was big conversations, do we allow people to have a vehicle? Do we allow people to drive? But again, if we really are supporting recovery and supporting people reintegrating into society, it's appropriate to have those conversations.
Right.
But, we have to think about what makes sense and then hopefully make the best decisions we're able to. As part of the program, there is a psychiatrist. 16 hours a week is the minimum expectation under the regulation. In many ways, it's staff, kind of like a mini hospital. So there are therapists there, there's nursing staff there, it's heavily staffed during the daytime, usually in the evening and overnight hours. There's fewer staff, but there's more than one.
Mm-hmm.
They've set it up so I think they call that sweetheart bedroom. So it's like a bedroom, and a bathroom in the middle, and then there are at least 2 exclusively independent bedrooms.
I guess to your point of citizen concern, that it sounds like most of the questions we will get will be in regards to public safety. So I think at the appropriate time, if we're going to be fielding calls, as you illustrated, that might help for us to have some more information on how best you think we can answer those questions for
Sure.
us today.
I had talked to Samantha a couple of weeks ago about, my concern about this. So, however we can, make sure that you folks feel like you have information that you're able to share. Of course, we're not able to share who's there or anything like that, and sometimes people presume that we can share that stuff. But I also think it's appropriate that, you know, even as a county, one of our focal points has been reducing prison population at CCP. And, you know, just actually earlier today, I was made aware of an article that the district attorney was part of back in December about people who were incompetent to stand trial being released. And, you know, it was honestly kind of not becoming of the mental health system. And there was no reference to the good work that happens in the community. So that was a concern for me, especially given all the work we've been doing on the criminal justice policy team, you know, and I've been meeting with Rebecca, identifying, because Rebecca consistently says there's like 10% of our population at the prison who have mental illness, and how can we do this better? So I've been meeting with Rebecca monthly and looking at their census of people who have mental illness, cross-referencing with our database to see, okay, how can we do this better and cut prison population? So, you know, we've been working hard on strategies to better support people in the community. So I don't know, I mean, we're happy to, I was thinking we could have an open house before the program opens, and that way then if folks had questions or concerns, hopefully they'll come the day of, they'll get to meet some of the staff who are overseeing, you know, the operations there. We have excellent providers. I think it's one of our strongest providers who's developing the program, and so I feel really confident with their skills.
And so this location is in the borough?
I think it's just outside.
Just outside the borough.
North Middleton Township.
Okay.
And obviously we went through all the permitting process and all of that stuff. So.
Right. I think it would be good when you have that open house to invite the officials in North Middleton.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's always good for them to have the background, because I'm sure they will be fielding a couple of phone calls.
I know that they had early meetings, you know, with North Middleton Township staff and, you know, make sure that they were aware of the type of program it was. And, you know, they, in terms of the regulatory, kept saying they felt like it was going to be more like a nursing home, which in some ways it resembled a nursing home. And depending on the age of the people who are receiving support, sometimes it resembles a nursing home depending on who's there. But often, especially if there are individuals who have been deemed incompetent to stand trial, they do tend to be in programs like this a lot longer. You know, because if they're out, then sometimes they wander off. Sometimes, you know, and it's not like they're criminal, but sometimes people are misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm.
So now, you've opened other facilities in the past, just not from the ground up.
Right.
So do you see any significant difference between the rollout of this facility versus what you're already experienced with?
In terms of the rollout, no. In terms of the people who were serving there, perhaps.
Okay.
And that's just because of the criminal piece.
All right.
You know, we will probably
So that
have a
is
couple of
unique to
individuals
this.
who have committed sex offenses who are there. So I want to be, you know, mindful of that, as well as, you know, transparent that there probably will be some individuals with serious mental illness who have had sexual offenses there. And we'll be working closely with the treatment providers to make sure that their needs are being met. You know, honestly, anybody who's ever been on Megan's Law's website, you can track where people are residing in the community now. How much stronger is it if you know that, you know, individuals with serious mental illness who perhaps have committed some type of terrible criminal offense are supported and are well supported in an environment, so you know that they're safe, and you know that there's a lot of intentionality about keeping the community safe.
As you know, there's not a lot of sympathy for that segment of the population, so.
This is honestly the only program that we've ever had people coming directly from, well, I'm not gonna say that, actually we have lots of people who come directly from prison to our CRR programs. And we work really closely with the prison to make sure that that happens successfully. But with the mental health board, that's been wonderful, and folks have been successful supporting them. Often it's all about who you're with, you know, people, places, and things. So if you're surrounded by good people who can help you stay focused on being well, that's what happens. You know, all our programs take people from the criminal justice.
So that brings me to the question of the providers. You say it was New Horizons?
New Visions.
Oh, New Visions, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, well, they've been around for quite a while, so
Forever.
my question, they would think they would be, but of course they have turnover and all those other
Mhm.
issues everybody else has. What is their history in running a facility of this type? Do they have their experience in doing this?
No,
They do not.
there are so few LTSRs in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
We currently have 3 people at Dauphin County's LTSR, and we've contracted with them since the closure of Harrisburg State. And Keystone operates that one, but I believe there's about 4 LTSRs in the state of Pennsylvania.
Where's the one in Dauphin County?
Progress Avenue. Progress Avenue.
Okay.
So just a little bit past Bartan building. It's back off the road a little bit.
Yeah.
And our plan would be that the 3 people who are currently there, we would transition to this LTSR as well, which again will free up space for Dauphin County
Right.
in their program, so they see that as a win too.
Who's the provider for?
Keystone Community Mental Health Services.
Sorry?
Keystone?
Oh, yeah, right,
Mhm.
okay, all right.
But this is the first time New Visions has ever done a program like this, but they have a vast history with lots of different residential programs, CRRs, personal care. They have supported living services where staff go into people's apartments and, just make sure that they're taking care of themselves, they're purchasing groceries. We also have the Fairweather Lodges that New Visions operates, which is a much more independent setting where it's kind of a congregate living environment where people live as a family.
So like, to me, the critical element here sounds to be, at least from the public standpoint, there's gonna be the security measures that are in place, and you detail those a little bit. So is New Visions responsible for that as well, or are they relying on someone else, or what do we know about that? Because we're gonna get questioned on that aspect.
Well, they're working with contractors around locking systems
Okay.
and making sure that the security is in place. But it's not a prison, so there's not like
Right.
guards. It's a treatment facility, so staff will be working with the treatment providers, the psychiatrists and the nurses and the social workers. That if people want to go out in the community, they're making sure that they're accompanied, and only if they're well enough that they will be able to go independently. But I think it may be a little while before that happens.
I would think the greater concern would be someone who is off premises that is not authorized to be off premises. So,
Mhm.
it would be nice to have some assurances that our folks know what they're doing.
We'll do our best. I can think of one occasion at the Dauphin County LTSR where there was a person who was able to scale the fence, because they have a fence as well. The person scaled the fence and got out. So, that was that situation. But, there's only so many things that we can think about,
Right, so 2 questions for you, Annie. One, is this a facility where there are people that are up all night? Not the residents, but their staff that is, right, then they're up all night keeping an eye on things. And then the other thing that I think is helpful is, if I get questions, is I'm thinking about being able to say to people, well, a resident would not be moved here if they had not been cleared by a physician. Okay, so you
That's
don't
correct.
get moved unless you are medically
That's correct.
and mentally okay to be moved.
Now, we'll add this caveat.
Okay,
Sometimes people coming from the correction system, we have not great notice. I do get lists from the state correction systems every month, people who are seriously mentally ill, who are maxing out, and often that's because they're registered sex offenders and who refuse treatment.
okay.
I just asked some of our staff to look over those lists, and I took a look and said, I want to know. This is a couple of people that immediately caught my attention. Tell me what you can find out. So
Okay.
we're looking at those lists. Predominantly, I think these are going to be people that we know and have, honestly, a pretty long history with.
Okay,
Andy, if I'm not mistaken, that location is close to police coverage.
It is.
Yeah, and this may sound dumb, but, occasionally, hasn't happened lately, but a patient, a resident will wander out of our nursing home. Compared to this facility, what is the chances of that happening? Unattended?
I'm going to say minimal.
Yeah.
The other thing we've done from a public safety standpoint is all of our programs develop all hazards plans. And all of our programs then submit those to Bob's office for review. We actually had some of Bob's staff help in developing those all hazards plans. So we, I feel like we're doing a decent job, helping our providers to understand the importance of safety planning, as well as being aware that, emergencies can happen and what's your plan to support the residents. And from a regulatory status, many regulations have been drafted around assuring that there's adequate resources available in the event of a power outage. In fact, that was part of our conversation with the locksmith was,
Right.
in the event of a power outage, what happens?
Mm-hmm.
What doors stay locked, what doors stay open? In the event of a fire, what happens? So we're already having those, I think, fairly detailed conversations.
I would imagine this facility is everything's subject to inspections these days. We have enormously robust inspections at one of the nursing homes, so I would imagine this is going to be just as robust and hopefully more. Who has the responsibility for that?
Well, it would be, yes, the DEP would be part of it, and who else? Whoever the inspection people are with making sure that the general contracting pieces are appropriate, and that's stuff that.
Well, I'm talking about things such as auditing the practice, just like our nursing home, they audit their practices, how well they're complying.
Operationally, that would be revisions, and they would be subject to the state licensing people. That way, we remind our providers that the state license is the minimum level of expectations.
Right, yeah.
And from a quality management point of view, we hope that everybody exceeds those minimum standards. So we make that clear.
So who has the responsibility then? Is it I imagine the licensing would be big on this, but in terms of the responsibility for policing infractions and ensuring corrective actions are taken if there are.
It would be New Visions and their management staff and our office as well. So the structure of the incident management is, in our office, is Robin.
Right.
Robin oversees all the incidents that come in, and if it requires an investigation, then it's investigated within 24 hours.
So, and I'm not saying anything against Divisions at all, but if there was a belief that they were not fulfilling their obligation and we needed to make some type of change, who initiates that? Is it we?
Yes. We meet with our providers
Okay.
regularly, and it's not uncommon, for us to just kind of show up. Especially if we know there are issues that are happening, if we know somebody's not doing well,
Right.
it's not uncommon just to show up and to meet. And even myself, we work really closely with families to make sure that their loved ones' needs are being met to the best of our ability.
Very impressive.
We think so. We're super excited about it and grateful for the chance to do it.
I think, Annie, one of the best things that you're doing is that you are being so open and transparent about this. That is excellent.
I'm trying. It
Excellent.
doesn't serve anybody to be like behind the scenes doing it and then, surprise,
Right.
How do we better educate the public about the needs of individuals with mental illness? It used to be that nobody could talk about cancer.
Right.
And now everybody can talk about cancer, and that was the way we reduced the stigma of having cancer was by talking about it. Same thing with people with mental illness. The only way we're gonna get ahead of this is we stop criminalizing people with mental illness and start talking about mental illness, what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, and how to help people who may have a mental illness. So, you folks know that we've done a lot of work with QPR within the county structure. We're doing this with, partnering with UPMC, the deepest well, and how trauma impacts us across the lifespan. So we're trying to hit both ends of the spectrum. And I said it at department head, if we did a better job meeting families' needs on the front side, we probably wouldn't have to build programs like this later in life. Hopefully we would be able to reduce prison populations. So some of it's about community education and supporting families. Any other questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll send you updates every now and then. The state's also looking at pictures, saying, high five, way to go, guys.
Just update, thank you. Okay, we reached the point where any new business, any other business can come up Okay, if that's the case, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
You have a